Welcome to Session 3 of Rational Egoism, the Morality for Loving Life. Today, we're going to talk about your nature as a human being and what that means for a moral code that serves your life and happiness. But before we do, let's do a quick recap of the last session, just to get everything fresh in mind. First, we looked at the claim that without God, objective morality would be impossible, and we saw that this just is not so. The very concerns that religious people have about the need for an objective morality point to the fact that human life is the fundamental concern, the ultimate goal, and thus the standard of moral value. We also saw that a morality based on divine commandments would not be objective, but subjective. It would be merely the dictates of a consciousness, a subject. That's the very essence of subjectivism. For morality to be objective, it must be based on observable facts, including the fundamental alternative that gives rise to the possibility and need of values, the alternative of life or death. And as we've seen, rational egoism is based on that alternative. Those are the alternatives, or that is the alternative that gives rise to the very possibility and need of values. We next looked at both the is-ought gap and the naturalistic fallacy, and we saw that both of these are themselves false. You can derive moral principles or oughts from the facts of reality once you see that the basic purpose of moral principles is to guide our thoughts and actions so that we can live and prosper. Moral values and oughts are simply certain kinds of facts regarding the requirements of human life. If you want to live and achieve happiness, you must think and act rationally. You must be productive. You must treat people fairly. You must support a social system that leaves people free to think and act rationally so that they can live, and so on. So there is no gap between ought and is, or between facts and values. Moral values and oughts are facts. They're facts about how we must act in order to live. As for the so-called naturalistic fallacy, the notion that good cannot be defined, the idea itself is false. You can define good as long as you bear in mind that the concept of good is not a primary. It's not a starting point. Good, like value, presupposes an answer to the question, good to whom and for what? And if you bear that in mind, we can define good very easily. In regard to human beings, what is morally good is that which is good to a human being for his life, given the kind of animal he is. Why? Because life is the fundamental fact that makes the concept of good possible and necessary, just like it's the fundamental fact that makes the concept of value possible and necessary. In this session, we're going to elaborate on human nature, and we're going to see how it further informs objective morality and provides us with guidance for living. Let's dive in. Now, what exactly is a human being? What are we? What kind of animal are we? What are our defining characteristics? Well, the basic thing that makes us human is the faculty we have in our heads, our minds, our rational faculty, along with its close but very different friend, our emotional faculty, which we'll talk about as well. Let's take a look at these, starting with reason. So we human beings have this thing, reason, that enables us to think, to form concepts, and to use language, and to understand the world and ourselves by means of these things. By using reason, we can figure out what is true or false, what is supported by evidence or not supported by it, what is good and bad for our lives. We can also project our ideas into the future. We can make plans and follow through on our plans and achieve our goals over a span of time. Reason makes us amazingly and indeed freakishly different from other animals. Even the brightest of other animals, dolphins, crows, elephants, and the like, even they can't do the kinds of things that reason enables us to do. Dolphins can't build cities. Crows can't launch satellites. Elephants can't write constitutions or cure cancer. Even other primates, monkeys, gorillas, chimpanzees, and the like, even they can't do anything like what we can do using reason. Monkeys might love mangoes, but they can't create mango farms or make mango ice cream. Only people can do such things. And the difference that makes the difference is our rational faculty, our faculty of reason. But importantly, reason is not alone in here, in our heads, right? We have an emotional faculty in there too, and it is vitally important to us as well. Our emotions are our psychological means of experiencing our values. If you want a job and you apply for it and get it, you feel positive emotions, emotions of joy. If you don't get the job, you feel negative emotions, sadness, or the like. If you ask a girl or a guy out on a date and she or he says yes, you feel excited. If she or he says no, you feel dejected, and so on. Emotions are crucially important, but they are not our means of knowledge. Reason is. The way to have reason and emotion coexist in harmony in your soul is to treat each of these mental faculties as what it is, and not to treat either of them as something it's not. So just as we don't treat reason as our faculty for feeling, that's not a mistake that we are inclined to make, so too we should never treat emotions as our means of knowing. They're not. This is a fundamental fact of human nature. We have these two mental faculties, reason and emotion, and each serves a specific purpose in enabling us to live and love our lives. Building on this basic fact, we can see some more important truths. One is that we can choose to think or not to think, to use reason or not to use it. This capacity actually comes with the faculty of reason. To have reason means that you can choose to use it or not to use it. You can choose to exert mental effort or not to do so. And doing so, thinking, exerting mental effort, is essential to living and loving life. Your ability to think or not is the basis of your free will. Now, obviously, you can't choose to do anything you want in some unrestricted way. For instance, you can't choose to defy gravity or travel backward in time or turn water into wine. But you can choose to use your mind, and it is a beautiful thing to use. Another thing about human nature is that we can, and if we want to live and love our lives, we must set long-term goals that are good for our life and bring us joy. These are our purposes. A purpose is an intentional long-range goal that you set and pursue because it enables you to live and love your life. So purposes include a career you love, friendships that fill your life with joy, romantic relationships that fuel your soul, recreational activities you love, and so on. Now, so far, we've seen reason, emotion, free will, and purpose, all as crucial aspects of human life and human nature. And we've seen why each of these is good for living. Now I want to add one more aspect to the mix. What happens when you choose to use reason to gain knowledge and you make life-serving plans? What happens when you recognize that your emotions are your psychological means of experiencing your values and you don't treat them as your means of knowledge, but rather just treat them as what they are? And what happens when you pursue and achieve long-range goals that are good for your life, a career, romantic relationships, and the like? Well, the answer is you feel really good about yourself and your life, right? And you experience this really good feeling in two ways. You see that you are capable of dealing with reality, and you see that you are worthy of success in life. These two aspects, you're capable of dealing with reality and you're worthy of success in life. This set of convictions comes together and amounts to another crucial value involved in human nature, and that is the value of self-esteem. When you feel confident and worthy because you see that you have tried and succeeded in life, you come to love yourself and your life. Self-esteem is a core aspect of happiness, and you gain it by choosing to use reason and pursuing life-serving goals and purposes. This is why Ayn Rand called reason, purpose, and self-esteem the three cardinal values of rational egoism. Now, there are other values that matter to human life and happiness. These aren't the only values, but these three are key. Now, I want you to observe that each of these faculties is a spiritual value, not a material value. Reason is a mental faculty, not a physical faculty. Purpose is an aim or an intention or long-range goal. It is not a physical thing. And self-esteem is a psychological value, not a physical value. This is worth noting because it points to the material and spiritual nature of human life. We are not merely physical beings or meat in motion, as some people put it, right? We are beings of body and mind, matter and spirit, whose nature and needs pertain to both aspects of this integrated whole. We have a mind, and we need to use it. We have emotions, and they are vital to our life and happiness. We have free will, the capacity to choose to think or not to think. And if we want to live and love our lives, we must choose to think. We must use our minds. We need to choose and pursue life-serving purposes, projects, goals that fill our life with meaning and joy. And we need self-esteem, the conviction that we are capable of living and worthy of success. Now, of course, there's much more to human nature than what I've gone over here, but these are some of the fundamentals, and it gives you an indication of the sort of basic core values in the morality of rational egoism. We human beings are complex. We're the freaks of nature on this planet. We really are. And if we want to live fully and achieve the full kind of happiness that is possible to us as human beings, we have to recognize these basic facts about human nature, and then we have to act accordingly. Now, I want to consider the relationships of these values that we've been talking about, in particular reason, purpose, and self-esteem, to the actions that we must take in order to use, pursue, or achieve our values. So this is the relationship of value to virtue, of value to virtue. A value, as we've seen, is something you act to gain or keep or use in order to support your life and your happiness. So, for instance, reason is a tool that you use to support your life. So it's a value. Purposes are goals or projects that you choose to pursue. So those are values. Self-esteem is a conviction or an emotion that you seek to gain or keep. That is a value. Virtues, by contrast, are actions. They're actions that you take in order to achieve your values or to put your values to work. So virtues include the act of thinking, the act of planning, the act of producing, and so on. The basic moral virtues are the fundamental actions necessary to support and enhance your life. These include using your mind, going by reason, not going by emotion or treating faith as a means of knowledge, right? And this is the virtue of rationality. It is recognizing and accepting the fact that reason is your means of knowledge and thus your basic means of living. That's the virtue of rationality. Another virtue involves creating values that you can consume or trade, right? And this is the virtue of productiveness. In order to live, you must produce. Another virtue is judging people rationally and treating them accordingly as they deserve to be treated. This is the virtue of justice. Another virtue is refusing to pretend that facts are other than they are. And the refusing is the verb here, the action, right? This is the virtue of honesty, the refusal to pretend that facts are other than they are. It's not good for you to do that. It's bad for your life if you do that. If you pretend that, the light is green when it's actually red, or if you pretend that someone who is dishonest and unjust is not, it's just going to get you into trouble. Another one is upholding and acting on rational principles, such as the principles we're discussing here. This is the virtue of integrity. Integrity sometimes is categorized or defined as just, walking your talk or, doing what you say you're going to do. Well, if you walk the talk that's bad for your life, or you do things that you say you're going to do that are bad for your life, that's not really a virtue, certainly not a life-serving virtue. So under rational egoism, integrity is consistency or loyalty to rational principles, rational ways of thinking and acting. It gets more specific when you have a solid and objective standard of value. Another virtue is relying on the judgment of your own mind rather than turning to other people to see what they say you should think or believe. This is the virtue of independent thinking, right? And it's very similar to the virtue of rationality, going by reason. But when you have the alternative of, other people have these ideas, or some people think this, or some people value that, when you have that context, the alternative exists that you could go, I'll just kind of follow the crowd, or, do what my parents, preachers, or teachers tell me to do. And the virtue of independent thinking is the virtue of not doing that, but instead saying, no, I want to understand what's true and what's good. I want to judge for myself what the facts of the matter are. And so this is a very important virtue as well. And there are more virtues, but you get the idea here. These are some of the fundamentals, and they're some of the fundamental virtues because they're basic actions that everyone must take if he or she wants to live a wonderful life and achieve happiness. Now, about these virtues, I want you to observe one more thing. Each of these virtues is a recognition of a fact. This goes back to this whole theme about there's an objective basis for all of this. So as I'll go through these virtues again and just think about them this way now. It is a fact that if you want to know what is true and what is good for your life, you have to look at reality and think. You have to use your mind. You have to use reason. You have to be rational. These are the facts that give rise to the virtue of rationality. This isn't just an opinion. We can see the facts that give rise to the need to act rationally, right? And that is the connection of the virtue to reality. Another one, it is a fact that in order to live and achieve happiness, you must produce the values on which your life and happiness depend. These are the facts that give rise to the need of productiveness. Now, of course, if you want or need things that you don't yourself produce, but that other people produce, right? You can trade value for value with other people to get the things that they've produced. This is the principle of trade, which we'll talk more about in the next session. But trading presupposes that you have produced, right? So you still need to produce in order to live. And that is just a fact. Another one, it's a fact that if you want good relationships with good people, you have to judge people rationally according to the available and relevant facts and treat them accordingly as they deserve to be treated. These are the facts that give rise to the virtue of justice, which is the virtue of judging people rationally and treating them accordingly. It's a fact that other people are not the source of truth. Other people can be and often are wrong. We all know this, right? Now, of course, you can learn from other people if they're rational and they have something, value to teach you. There's no question about that. We've all learned from people. But in order to know whether an idea is true, you have to look at reality for yourself and see whether the idea is supported by facts. Only you can do that for yourself. These are the facts that give rise to the virtue of independent thinking. So you get the idea. Each of these virtues it's an action in the sense that virtues are actions that you must take in order to achieve life-serving values. But each virtue is also a recognition of a fact. And these are the facts that give rise to this aspect of the morality of rational egoism. So think of it this way. Moral values are the things we need to gain or keep or use in order to live and love our lives. It's all about living and loving life, right? And moral virtues are the mental or physical actions we must take in order to survive and thrive. Same thing, but just in the realm of action. And for either of these to be objective, whether values or virtues, they must be derived from observation and logic, as we've been deriving them here. Now, we've considered just some of the values and virtues of rational egoism. There are more, but I think you can see the pattern here, which means that you can identify such values and virtues yourself. And this is really what rational egoism is all about. It's about you understanding reality and the requirements of your life by means of your own rational judgment, so that you can act confidently and live a wonderful life. Here again, we see the reason for the word rational in conjunction with egoism. Rational egoism is about using your mind to love your life. It is a beautiful thing. In our next and final session of this course, we'll consider the kind of social system that enables people to use their minds and love their lives together in a social context. I look forward to seeing you then.